reviewing the September 2017 Watchtower Study Edition for the week of November 6th through 12th. This is the JW Review. So it's been a while since I've done a review, just been really busy and just simply haven't had the time. And a lot of the articles as of late have not been overly interesting, not a whole lot to point out. There have been a few, but by and large they just haven't been so interesting that I just felt a huge obligation to jump in and review. But if I had the time I probably would have, but didn't have the time these past couple of weeks. And I did do a presentation last week, I think it was, at Kennesaw State University on the Trinity, which was the first time in, over a decade, I'm sure, since I've really done any kind of public teaching or public discussion, interaction on the Trinity. And a lot of that is because I've just really wanted to personally delve into the topic a lot deeper. And I wanted to do a lot of study, and I actually hadn't had the time to do a lot of the study that I'd wanted to in the past 10 years, because I've been focusing on other topics related to Jehovah's Witnesses, especially the governing body, ecclesiology, the two-class theology, 1914, 1919, and topics like that, because those are the topics that you don't see discussed all that often by people like me who are, of course, critical of the Watchtower Society. But when it comes to the Trinity and Christology and things like that, you can find just tons and tons and tons, an overwhelming amount of information on the internet and books on that. And so what do I have to offer that's really new in that area? Well, I think in order to offer something new in that area, you need to do a lot of study. So I'm still not where I want to be to where I can start doing a lot more regular reviews and interactions on the subject of Christology. I did that talk at Kennesaw State because I was asked to do so. And I still feel that some of the angles that I took in that talk were not exactly what you're used to hearing when someone talks about Christology from a Trinitarian perspective. So anyway, all that to say, check that out. I hope you enjoy it. And if you have any comments, questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm not interested in doing endless debates and dialogues on that topic just because I just simply don't have the time. It's almost like when you talk about critiquing atheism on the internet, you'll just get involved in endless cycles of debates, and you'll never get anything done in life. You can just really get sucked into that. And same goes with the Trinity. So I'll just leave it there. And so we're going to look at the September 2017 Watchtower Study Edition, and skipping, of course, the first two articles because those have already happened. The October 30th article, Imitate Jehovah's Compassion, will be happening this week. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the next week's article, The Word of Our God Endures Forever. And I actually didn't find a whole lot that I disagreed with in this article per se. What I'm really going to talk about is I suppose the consistency for which the Watchtower applies some of their remarks. And this is going to have mostly to do with the divine name. So let's go ahead and jump into the article. And we're going to go ahead and start on page 19 in paragraph 4. So the highlighted portion here, if you're watching, you won't obviously see this if you're listening to the podcast, but for those of you who can see this, we'll start in paragraph 4, a little past halfway down the paragraph. Oh, by the way, so most of this article is talking about Bible translation and how God preserves His Word. And so, like I said, most of this I can find a lot of agreement on. And but again, there's some things I want to challenge the Watchtower on in terms of a consistency. So, paragraph 4, a little past halfway down, some have felt that they should learn ancient Hebrew and Greek so that they could read the Bible in the original languages. That, however, may not be as profitable as they imagine. So this is actually a little asterisk here, is pointing you to the November 1st, 2009 issue of the Watchtower. And I would recommend that you read that. I did read that whole article just because they wanted to qualify what they're saying here. And so reading the article, there was very little that I could actually disagree with. And so one of the things that they said, which is quite true, is that learning Greek and Hebrew can be a dangerous thing. And I've often heard it said by others who are much more wiser and smarter than me, say that a little bit of Greek or Hebrew can be a dangerous thing. And that is true. If you're going to learn Greek and Hebrew, you really need to learn it. You don't just want to read halfway through an entry-level Greek textbook and think that you've got it, and now you can start telling people that you know Greek and acting like you know it and getting involved in all of these debates and whatnot. So you just really need to be careful there, because the Greek language can be, and of course it has been, severely abused by people who think they know something. And then it really shows that they don't when you really dig in and analyze what they're trying to say, because you might know or think you know this Greek grammatical construction or this rule, and then you find out there's exceptions to that rule, but you wouldn't know that unless you really knew the language. So I think the statement in a lot of ways is true. It may not be as profitable as you imagine if you try to learn Greek and Hebrew, because you can end up in just, so much confusion. So much confusion. It's both those languages are very complex. I would say I've not even tried to learn Hebrew, but I have tried to learn Greek. I've gotten through a lot of Mounce's beginning Greek textbook, and I got I feel like I had some of the basics, but man, it's quite difficult to learn it. And so, it may not be as profitable as you imagine trying to learn it. So, I would say, don't bother really trying to learn it unless you're going to actually take a class on it from an expert. You really need that accountability. You really need that instruction. So, I personally don't know. I know a lot of people that know Greek and Hebrew. I don't personally know anyone that has actually learned it thoroughly on their own, to where they've really got the Greek language down at an advanced level, a very proficient level, but they learned it on their own. Those are so few. So if you really want to learn Greek and Hebrew, I would say absolutely go for it. But go to a local seminary and audit some of the classes. You can do that. You can probably even do that online, but I would say do it in person, so that you really have that instruction from a professor. You can ask questions, take the tests, and so you can actually have a third-party verification in a sense, to where they can say, yes, you're qualified. You got 100 on your exams. You got an A in the class. So I can tell you that you know Greek. So it's someone else telling you that and affirming that you know it, rather than you just yourself saying, well, I got through Wallace's advanced Greek grammar, so therefore I know Greek. I don't know about that. So so I would say this is some pretty wise language, but sometimes I wonder, does the Watchtower really want Jehovah's Witnesses to know Greek and Hebrew proficiently? Because I didn't see a lot of encouragement in that article in the 2009 issue of the Watchtower, to where they would encourage people to learn Greek and Hebrew. Because if I were to go to an elder in the Kingdom Hall and say, hey, I really want to learn Greek, I want to learn it at an advanced level, how can I go about doing that? It's doubtful that elder is going to say, oh yeah, go to your local seminary and learn Greek. I doubt that's going to happen. So how do they expect you to learn Greek without going to a seminary, because again, I just don't think there's really a better way to do it. I just don't think reading a textbook on your own is a great way to do it, unless maybe you're doing it in some type of group setting. And I don't know too many Jehovah's Witnesses that are getting together in groups privately and learning Greek and Hebrew. That would almost be like the warnings that I've seen in past Watchtower articles, to where they warn against such independent study groups. So I would say, yes, go learn Greek and Hebrew. We need more people, especially apologists who know proficiently Greek and Hebrew, and especially if you're dealing with Jehovah's Witnesses, we need more people to know Hebrew and Greek, and I would count myself in that group of people that really do need to learn Hebrew and Greek. And so I do have an ambition to finish up my seminary degree, and I did start a master's in a Master's of Arts in Biblical Studies at Reformed Theological Seminary, but I only got a few classes in, and just due to financial reasons and time constraints, I was never able to get very far into the program. But I do aspire to go back and to learn the original languages, because I think, again, we just need more people who are involved in ministry to Jehovah's Witnesses to know the original languages. So let's jump on over here into paragraph 5. Notably, the King James Version drew only limited attention to God's name. It used Jehovah in a few verses, and it used the word Lord in capital letters in other verses in Hebrew scriptures where the divine name originally occurred. Later printings also used the word Lord in capital letters in some verses in the Christian Greek scriptures. In that sense, the King James Version acknowledged the rightful place of God's name in the so-called New Testament. So this is one place to where I would agree with the Watchtower that the King James Version rightly used the divine name, but only selectively. They should have been consistent, and they should have used it where the divine name should occur. And of course, I would agree further with the Jehovah's Witnesses to where you shouldn't replace the Tetragrammaton with the word Lord. There's simply no reason to do that. And all Bibles today should be, if not using the Tetragrammaton letters, YHWH, or some type of transliteration of the divine name, whether it's a Jehovah or Yahweh. I prefer Jehovah for reasons of consistency. And I totally disagree with my fellow apologists who say that Jehovah is some type of bad or poor rendition of the divine name, when in point of fact, it's no more poor than other names in the Bible like Jesus, because it's not like we're saying that Jesus, the word Jesus, is what was originally stated any more than the word Jehovah is how it was originally pronounced. It was probably something like Yahweh. But that's not how English Bibles render names. They don't. They anglicize it. So if they're going to be truly consistent, I guess if we're going to use the word Yahweh, then in the Greek and the New Testament, we should use the Greek rendition Iesus when talking about Jesus. So the Jehovah's Witnesses are right here. The King James Version did acknowledge the rightful place of God's name in the Old Testament, but here's where the Jehovah's Witnesses have gone astray. It's when they put the divine name in the New Testament, when it does not belong in the New Testament. It does not. If you look in the Greek scriptures that we do have in the original Greek, you will not find the Tetragrammaton even one single solitary time in any of the over 5,000 Greek manuscripts. So it is wrong for the Watchtower to do that, just as it is wrong for a Bible translation not to put some rendition of the divine name in the Old Testament. So the Watchtower is just as wrong, and this is where I'm going to challenge the Watchtower on consistency. So if we're talking about restoring the divine name where it belongs, then restore it where it belongs, and don't put it where it doesn't belong, such as the New Testament. So let's continue on into paragraph 6. Even so, much of the wording of the King James Version became archaic over the centuries. The same is true of early Bible translations in other languages. Are we not grateful then to have the modern language New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures? This translation is available in whole or in part in over 150 languages, thus being available to a vast part of the population today. Its clear wording allows the message of God's Word to reach your heart. Significantly, the New World Translation restores God's name to its rightful place in the Scriptures. And, when I started reading this article, I had a feeling this was going to turn into a promotion of the New World Translation. And the way they're painting this picture here in paragraph 6 is that, well, we have the King James Version, that was archaic, and so we saw a need for a modern Bible translation. So we created the New World Translation for that reason, so people could have an understandable Bible translation today. That's kind of the picture that's being painted here. But that's just not an accurate picture. We have so many translations that have existed prior to the New World Translation. Now, in the 1950s, there were less, of course, than today. So there is that. But still, even at that time, you had pretty good Bible translations. And so, like the New Revised Standard Version, which I'm not sure if that was in the 1950s or not, but even the Revised Standard Version, you had other versions at that time that were pretty good translations. But it just makes it sound like the New World Translation was that next step to have a clear translation. And of course, the reason for going with the New World Translation is that it restores God's name to its rightful place in the Scriptures, which they're not the only translation to do that, by the way. There are other translations, though there are few that actually do that. But beyond that, what other reason is there for using the New World Translation? Is it that they are a much higher level of scholarship than other translations? Well, that's yet to be proven, I would say, because I don't know about the qualifications of the translators of the New World Translation. So are they trained? Do they have PhDs that are relevant to the original languages, or what are their qualifications? And of course, the Jehovah's Witnesses will say, well, let's not look at their qualifications. Let's look at the quality of their work. Great. Let's look at the quality of the work. So someone show me, please, how the New World Translation is of superior quality than, let's say, the ESV or the New American Standard Version. And we can name a whole lot of other translations. So why is it superior? And I know Jehovah's Witnesses are going to say, well, there have been studies that have been done on that. Well, of course, I'm aware of Jason Badoon's book. I have it on my library shelf right here. In fact, let me go ahead and grab it. So there you can see Truth in Translation, Jason Badoon's work, and that book has been highly challenged. And I've seen, of course, the Watchtower mention this, and they praise this book very highly. But is there really anything else? Like, has the Watchtower themselves done their own analysis of the New World Translation versus other scriptures? I'd really like to see something like that. But what I'm trying to say here, just kind of in conclusion of this paragraph, is I don't see any good reason to go with the New World Translation. I think the ESV is backed up by much better scholarship, and I think it reads much better, as well as the New American Standard Version, which is what I prefer to read because it has a much more literal format than, let's say, the NIV or even some parts of the ESV. So let's move on here. Paragraph 15. How can we get the most out of our personal Bible reading? What can help us to direct attention to the Bible in the ministry? How can those who teach from the platform make the Scriptures the focus of their teaching? We will consider the answers to those questions in the next article. So these are really great questions, and in fact, it's great that they're even considering how can we be more scriptural in our teaching. How can we better direct the focus to the Bible? So I'm really glad here that the Watchtower is talking about, let's focus on the Bible. Let's go back to the Bible and make sure that what we say, what we teach is backed up on the Scripture. So they're saying that in the next article, they're going to answer those questions. So I haven't read the next article yet, but I'm really curious to see how they put it into practice and see, are they being consistent in that? Because of course we've seen in this podcast and many others who have been discussing the teachings of the Watchtower over the past decades, is that the attention is more on the governing body and how we can better emulate the teachings of the governing body, because that's how we can know what the Bible even says. We can't understand the Bible on our own. We have to have the governing body, and we have to be unified in believing whatever the governing body puts in print. So let's just hope that the Watchtower is going to be consistent, and maybe they're going to repudiate what they said about us being forced to believe everything that the governing body says. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think what we're going to see in the next article is a lot of inconsistency, though we might be glad that they're pointing the attention to the Scriptures. That's not, in fact, the case when you're forced to believe everything that the Watchtower says if you want to be a faithful Jehovah's Witness. So hopefully I will have time to address next week's article. If not, we'll have to skip it, but I'll do my best to address it. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and I've been getting a lot of really positive comments as of late, and some people bringing in questions that I really do appreciate. So if you've been doing that, leaving comments and questions, that's really encouraging to me, because I don't have any idea really who's watching, who's listening, whether people are benefiting from this, if people don't actually tell me. So, and one person wrote to me recently saying that they really appreciated my perspectives on this, in that they are really from a Christian perspective, because I'm telling you, a lot of the criticisms out there of the Watchtower are from a completely non-believing, oftentimes non-theistic perspective. And so a lot of those are really focused on like the policies and the procedures of the Jehovah's Witnesses, which of course I have a lot of criticisms there, but I really want to talk about what the Scripture says and analyzing what the Watchtower says from a scriptural perspective. So people have told me that kind of is one of the things that makes this podcast pretty unique, is that I do that. So I do that from a Christian perspective. Personally, I am reformed in my theology, so you are getting, at least I'm trying to give you a reformed theological perspective on this, which that, of course, is unique. But anyway, thank you for those comments. I really do appreciate it, and please spread the word about this. I really want to help people to be able to read articles like this, especially those who are attending meetings regularly, to just learn how to take off the Watchtower glasses, put a new set of glasses on, and to really learn how to think independently, and to learn how to question some of these things that may be a little more subtle, but you really have to peel off the skin and look into these things a little bit deeper. So I hope this is encouraging you to do that. So we'll see you next time. Thank you. For more information about Jehovah's Witnesses and other topics, please visit michaeljfelker.com. There you can also reach me directly to submit questions or comments to be covered on the JW Review. To subscribe to this podcast, please go to iTunes and search for the JW Review.